Prepare to experience the strongest radio allowable by law. Secrets will be revealed. Myths dispelled.
From the studio gym where excuses never apply.
It's Superhuman Radio with your host, Carl Lenore.
Hey, welcome back to another episode of Superhuman Radio. We have the great pleasure of having a returning guest who I have so much respect for, Dr. Thomas Seyfried, to talk about a recent paper that he published on the use of a dietary intervention to manage a glioblastoma. And actually, the study was done on a fellow that was on the show back in 2017, and that's Pablo Kelly, who was diagnosed in 2014, was on the show in 2016, giving us an update about how he was doing, using very, very non-conventional, non-standard of care approaches to manage his brain cancer. This is a very important discussion, as you're going to find out as we start to talk about it with Dr. Seyfried, because it's not just the brain that benefits from nutritional therapies when you have cancer. So many people have cancer today that they would be doing better, even if they had chemo, if they also adopted nutritional therapeutic approaches as well. In fact, one of the earliest interviews I did about this was probably in 2011 or 12, when a paper was published that looked at the use of the ketogenic diet as an adjunct to chemotherapy. And what that study showed, to summarize, was the people whose cancer was cured by the chemotherapy but continued to eat a ketogenic diet, the recidivism rate was virtually zero. None of them got cancer again. The people who were sent home to eat the way they did before, like 40 or 50% of them had a reemergence of a cancer. And so back then they were like, oh, well, we'll use the chemotherapy and the ketogenic diet. Well, now we're going to talk about the ketogenic diet exclusively without chemo or radiation in this particular case. Before we do that, I have to thank our title sponsor, and that is Legendary Foods, of course. If you go to the website, shrnetwork.biz/legendary, and use the code SHR10, you can buy the tasty pastries for 10% off. If they're in stock, I'm warning you now, you may have to get in line. These things are amazing. These are snacks reimagined. Less than 1 gram of sugar, 20 grams of high quality, leucine protein, 5 grams net carbs, and you will love them. And if you don't want to spend any money, but you'd like to try them, listen during the commercial break for the secret word. Email that secret word to onair@superhumanradio.net. Include your mailing address and we'll send you a box. Doesn't get any easier than that. So check that out. And now, without further delay, very proud to have Dr. Thomas Seyfried. Do you prefer to be called professor? Someone said that you prefer being called professor. Is that true?
Well, thanks, Carl. Thanks for having me on the show. Yeah, well, the students call me professor. Some call me doctor. It's just I'm a full professor at Boston College, the biology department. So either term is fine.
Okay. All right. So there's a lot of things I want to talk about, and I want to kind of set the table, if you will, a little bit. So, nutritional therapies like the ketogenic diet have an effect on cancer because they do what? What does the ketogenic diet provide that seems to have the ability in many cases to at least stop the growth of cancer and sometimes reverse the growth of cancer?
Yeah, well, it does two things primarily. One, it lowers one of the two key fuels necessary to drive tumor growth, and that is glucose. So glucose is a prime fuel for the growth of most cancers, if not all, to some extent. And it also elevates a fuel, ketone bodies, which are derived from the breakdown of fats. These fuels are non-fermentable, but all normal cells of our body that have functional mitochondria can burn ketones for energy. The cancer cells have abnormal mitochondria and consequently are locked into a fermentation mechanism. This is an ancient pathway of fermentations that existed before oxygen came on the planet, so 2.5 billion years ago. So these cells of our body have simply fallen back on these ancient fermentation pathways, and the fuels that drive fermentation are glucose and the amino acid glutamine. Both are fermentable fuels. So the ketogenic diet, which lowers blood sugar and elevates ketone bodies, is doing two things. Number one, it's reducing one of the prime fermentable fuels and forcing cells to use an alternative fuel that the cancer cells cannot use, which are the ketone bodies. So they provide so for cancers that are heavily glucose dependent, which is most of them, they start growing very, very slowly. And when you elevate the ketone bodies, one of the things that happens is the microenvironment of the tumor becomes less and less inflamed. And we all know that when you look at cancer in people, you see a lot of bloodiness, you see a lot of inflammation, you see a lot of degradation, you see a lot of stuff. Restricted ketogenic diets will clear up a lot of that mess, while at the same time restricting the ability of the tumor cells to grow rapidly.
Now, a lot of people probably don't know, but I want to assume there are people that are tuning in that have never heard any of this before. They've never heard any of your other interviews you've done on my show before. So Otto Warburg won the Nobel Peace Prize for discovering a way to detect a tumor by using radioisotope glucose infused into the body while you were under, is it a CT scan or what is it that they look for?
Well, first, Otto Warburg won the Nobel Prize in Physiology and Medicine, actually for discovering the oxidase enzyme that allows cells to obtain energy through respiration. That was in the 1930s, early 1930s. But his discovery was that mitochondria are defective in all tumors, and that in order to achieve a survival ability, they have to take in large amounts of glucose. Mm-hmm. And then much later in development, when they did radioisotope work, they just labeled glucose molecules and injected them into the body of cancer patients, and they were just, homed in right on where the tumors were sucking down the glucose, and they call that PET, position emission tomography. PET scanning is the way to identify tumors. It's really interesting, Carl. That's because the tumor needs so much glucose to survive, yet so many of the people that made the PET imaging never recognized that you could kill those things by taking away the glucose.
This is what I was trying to say. So they applauded Otto Warburg for finding a way to detect tumors, when in reality, Otto Warburg found out what tumors like to eat, and he really found out how to starve tumors, if you really think about it. But they didn't see it that way, did they?
No, and a lot of people are, well, I didn't realize, because we've met people that, I use PET all the time. And I said, why? Because the tumor needs so much glucose to grow. And they're transporters on the surface for glucose, the uptake of glucose. You have to have a transporter, a door, if you will, to get into the cell. Well, cancer cells have all the glucose doors are wide open. And when you put a molecule of glucose, it's called fluorodeoxyglucose. It actually has a tag on it for radio imaging, but it cannot be used as a direct fuel for the cancer cell. More or less, it goes through the door, but then gets stuck, and it builds up. It builds up and gives off a big light. You can say, look at there's your tumor right there. Well, why don't you put them on a ketogenic diet and then reduce the amount of? It just a lot of this stuff is so really simple. It's not complicated, but unfortunately. The reason why we have this cancer problem persisting today is because the current belief is that it's a genetic disease due to mutations, and it's not. And the big thing that we have done is shown in no uncertain terms that the mutations are effects. They're not the cause of the disease. So why is most of the cancer field, the Human Genome Cancer Atlas and all this kind of stuff, they're looking at all downstream epiphenomena that are basically unrelated to the origin of the disease, which explains in large part why we have over 1,600 people a day dying from cancer in the United States.
Because they're not treating the right thing. So there's, correct me if I'm wrong, but in your book, and by the way, if you know someone who has cancer or you have cancer, you must buy this book. You must read it. You must devour it. You must read it again. You must take notes. You must follow the actions. Cancer as a metabolic disease. If you go to shrnetwork.biz/cancer-metabolic, you can learn more about the book and how to get it. It's a must. Every person who has cancer should have this book before they start getting treatment, just because these dietary approaches can be incorporated into your treatments. In fact, there's evidence that getting on a ketogenic diet prior to receiving chemo and radiation protects the healthy cells from being damaged along with the cancer cells. But that's another discussion. But in your book, did you not detail a study where they removed to show that the oncogenes turn on after the mitochondria goes bad? You removed healthy mitochondria, put them in cancer cells, and vice versa. And you showed that cancer follows the mitochondrial change and not the genetic switches. Didn't you do that?
Yeah. Well, what I did for the first time, I didn't do any of those experiments.
Okay.
The world's best developmental biologists did those experiments to answer a fundamentally different question. And the question they were asking is whether a cancer genome can regulate normal development. So they were not interested or didn't know that their very same experiments were testing directly whether or not cancer was due to nuclear gene mutations or whether it was due to something in the cytoplasm. So they were looking at nuclear cytoplasm, which part of the cell is important for directing development. But what they essentially found was that when you take a normal, remove the cancer nucleus and put in a normal nucleus, that cell will have a tendency to become cancerous. Whereas on the other hand, if they took the nucleus out of the tumor cell that contains the oncogenes and tumor suppressor genes and all this, and put it into a new cytoplasm, they got normal development. In other words, the cell was developing even though they had the mutations that were supposed to go, but they weren't looking at it like that. They were surprised to find that the nucleus of a tumor cell could direct normal regulated cell growth, despite the continued presence of the mutations in the nucleus. So they were arguing that, cancer nuclei can regulate development up to a certain point when the organism aborted. And the abortion of the organism was the result of some major mutational defect that blocked development, but did not cause dysregulated cell growth. And then these experiments were followed up by others who transferred mitochondria, simply taking, there's much more difficult experiments, by the way. And they were able to show that if you replace cancer mitochondria with mitochondria from non-cancerous cells, you could re-regulate cell growth, turn off oncogenes, and redirect the growth. And this was repeated over and over again by different scientists in different systems, different cancer types, and they came to a very similar conclusion. What I simply did for the first time was I bundled all of those different experiments together and then represented the findings in the form of a new question. Is it the nucleus or the mitochondria that direct the dysregulated cell growth? And the answer is no, it's the mitochondria that are responsible for regulated cell growth. And when the mitochondria go bad, the cell goes into a cancerous dysregulated growth.
Now, why this is important, folks, is because literally billions of dollars are being spent on cancer cures and trying to discover which gene is responsible. And it's a waste of money. If they really wanted to do something about cancer, they would look at this phenomenon, the role of the mitochondria in turning on cancer, and they would find ways maybe with drug therapies, obviously nutritional therapies, to turn the mitochondria back into a healthy mitochondria, which is there ways to do that?
Well, I mean, right now, what we do is I'm not yet in the business of trying to re-educate a rogue cell of our body, a tumor cell, mainly because of the possibility of recidivism. They would go back.
Right.
I'm more interested in how do we purge the body of these cancer cells without causing toxicity to the patient. This seems to me to be the best approach at this time. In the future, we might be able to do what you may have suggested, and I know folks that are trying to do that now with a purified mitochondria injected into bodies to see if they could replace the abnormal mitochondria and return these rogue dysregulated cells back into the society of cells as a regulated cell. But that's a little bit further in the future. I think where we are right now is we have clearly the capability of purging the body of dysregulated cells without collateral toxicity. We can do that. We can drop the death rate of cancer by 50% in 5 to 10 years through adaptation of metabolic therapy, replacing most of chemotherapy, radiation therapy, and immunotherapy, which are the prime therapies that are being used today in the clinics. So metabolic therapy will be the future. It targets the 2' fuels that cancer cells need to grow, which is the sugar glucose and the amino acid glutamine. And without those 2 fuels, we can't find any cancer cells that can live. They can't live without the fermentation. The 2 fuels for fermentation are the glucose and the glutamine. If they are restricted with diets and drugs, because no diet is able to restrict glutamine, we have not found anything yet. So we use drugs, and the drugs are done in very low dosage, and once the patient is in nutritional or therapeutic ketosis, then we hit the glutamine drug. We hit the glutamine availability with the drug, and that really knocks the hell out of these tumor cells. And does it without, you don't need to lose your hair, you don't need to bleed from all orifices, you don't need to suffer immense adverse effects when you do metabolic therapy as opposed to standards of care.
Now let's talk about standards of care. The large number of people who die from cancers quite often die from the treatment for cancer. They could have a cancer, been going around in their life. They go to the doctor says, oh, you got cancer and we got to treat it. And let's say it's cisplantin or one of these horrible drugs. Years ago I said, treating cancer with chemotherapy is akin to burning down the house to get a stain off the carpet.
Yeah.
Like you're going to destroy everything and hope that most of it survives because you got to get this one thing over here. So am I wrong to say that the standards of care for cancer do pose health and longevity risks when someone subjects themselves to that?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. As a matter of fact, they have a new branch of medicine down here at the Dana-Farber Cancer Center in Boston, where it's called cancer survivor medicine. And, after being, poisoned and irradiated with all these different kinds of things, people do survive. We have large numbers of what we call cancer survivors. But these folks have paid a very, very high price to get their disease under management. They have neuropsychiatric problems. They have hormonal imbalance problems. They have digestive problems, cardiovascular problems. So survivors of cancer all of a sudden become patients for all kinds of other maladies.
Kidney problems,
for the fact that they were poisoned and irradiated. I mean, if I took a whole bunch of normal, healthy people, 40 or 50 years old, and we gave them radiation and chemo, I mean, we would create a whole population of people that would have ailments that would need to be addressed because they were radiated and poisoned.
Right.
And then the question is why are we doing that? Why are we treating cancer patients with toxic therapies? And the answer is, they have dysregulated cell growth and their cell cycle is out of control. And one way to stop that is let's blast the hell out of the DNA or give them toxic drugs that bind up microtubules and just stop the division. Well, the idea is if they can't divide without glucose and glutamine, There's no way. And they die. They not only can't divide, they die because they need fermentation fuels. All cancers are fermenters. And this is a thing that people cannot comprehend. The person with lung cancer, his cancers are fermenting glucose and glutamine. The person with breast cancer, glucose and glutamine fermentation. Glioblastoma, glucose and glutamine fermentation. All of the major cancers are fermenters dependent on glucose and glutamine for survival. There is not one single therapy anywhere used that simultaneously targets glucose and glutamine. Now, the evidence for this comes from the gentleman that you mentioned, which was Pablo Kelly. Well, Pablo happens to have a therapy acquired by chance alone. I call it a gift from God. By chance alone, his tumor obtained a mutation, if you can believe it, called IDH1. It was in the image that you set up originally. You know, this IDH1 mutation simultaneously targets the glucose glycolysis pathway and the glutaminolysis pathway, doing what I just said. It's targeting the availability to use glucose and glutamine. And together with his very restrictive therapeutic ketosis, was able to keep these cancer cells under complete control. Now, I don't want to say complete control because his tumor continues to grow, but it's growing at a glacial pace. It's growing very, very slowly. We have now opportunities to go intervene and really keep this guy alive for much, much longer periods of time. So he did several things. He avoided radiation and chemo. And I have published papers with my physician colleagues showing that radiation and chemo for brain cancer frees up massive amounts of glucose and glutamine in the tumor microenvironment, which will actually facilitate recovery and rapid demise of the patients. So he avoided all that. And he replaced that with a very strict keto metabolic therapy. And at the same time, he happened to, by chance alone, acquire a therapeutic mutation that actually helps.
A beneficial mutation.
Yes.
We always hear about mutations being bad for you.
Oh, yeah. No, by chance alone. It was like, winning the lottery, I told him.
Do you think it was chance, or you think that this was some sort of epigenetic effect of his lifestyle and diet?
No, because there's a lot of people that these tumors, there's not many of them. It's not like everybody who has a glioblastoma acquires, because don't forget, these are acquired somatic. They're not inherited. They're not inherited mutation. They happen at some time during the early stage of the origin of the tumor. By chance alone, one of the cells in the tumor acquires this kind of mutation. Many other patients acquire all kinds of other mutations. Many of them are irrelevant, but you can acquire a mutation. At least we've shown now that this acts the same as a powerful ketogenic diet together with a glutamine targeting drug. Now, as I said in the paper, for those brain cancer patients that are not fortunate enough to have by chance alone acquired this mutation, we can use different kinds of drugs that will do what that mutation did and bring the brain cancer patients back like Pablo. The thing is, they have to avoid radiation and toxic chemo and then target their glucose and glutamine simultaneously using diets and drugs. And the drugs we use are quite non-toxic, and they're very powerfully therapeutic. So, but nobody's doing this.
What are the drugs? I mean, okay, obviously getting into ketosis, exogenous ketones to elevate ketone levels in the blood.
Yeah.
But what do you do about the glutamine? I mean, you got protein is an important building block for the body.
Oh, absolutely. Well, this is what we published this thing called Press Pulse, the Press Pulse therapy for managing cancer, and it's based on the field of paleobiology. Interestingly enough, if you want to, so apparently we had these epochs in the history of the Earth where massive organ extinctions occurred, and they occurred massively when two unlikely events happened together. One was a chronic stress on populations of organisms that killed off a lot of the weak ones, but not the strong ones. And then there was an immediate catastrophic event, like a meteor impact or a bunch of volcanoes going off. And that would then kill off another massive group of individuals. But it was only when both of these things occurred simultaneously that we had massive extinctions of organisms on the planet. So what I did was I took that concept and I said, if we can push blood sugars down really, really low by transitioning the body over to ketones. Once the body is into ketosis, you can bring blood sugars down really, really low.
Right.
And that causes a press, and we can hold that low glucose for long periods of time as long as ketones are elevated. Once the body is in that state, then we use drugs as a pulse. And then with the press and the pulse, you exterminate all the remaining cancer cells. And you're absolutely right, Carl. Glutamine is one of the most essential amino acids in our body. And if you try to use a drug as a press, you can do more harm than good. But rather than that, you use it as a pulse. You don't keep the pressure on all the time. You pulse it once the body, because now the remaining cancer cells are exceedingly vulnerable to these pulses. So you hit them a little bit, because glutamine is essential for the urea cycle, for our gut, for our immune system. So when we kill large numbers of cancer cells, they're dead bodies laying around in the tissue. We have other cells in our body called macrophages, which come in and remove dead cells, but they need the same glutamine, but they need it for good reasons. The cancer cell needs it for dysregulated cell growth. Right. So here you have you have to recognize the biology. If you understand the biology of the disease, you are then capable of designing therapeutic strategies which enhance the strength of our normal cells and exploit the weaknesses of the tumor cells. So the tumor cells have all these, by chance alone, mutations. Those mutations that are there, we're not saying they don't exist, of course they're there. They prevent the cells from adapting to press pulse strategy. The normal cells can easily adapt. We evolved over millions of years to be in stressful environments, and we're burning ketones. So the normal cells are free of this pressure, but the tumor cells are exquisitely hit by this. They can't respond because they don't have flexible genomes. They're dependent on two fuels, glucose and glutamine. They're depending on fermentation. So we transition the whole body off to non-fermentable fuels and go after and kill in a very logical, strategic way and get rid of the cancer without toxicity.
Without damaging the good stuff. Yeah, it's brilliant.
So what I just shared with you will be, no question, will be the future of cancer research and treatment. The problem is, I just don't know how long it will take for people to, number one, understand it, and number two, to adapt it. And because, right now, it's such a radical approach, a paradigm change, a game changer. It's based on hard science and the understanding of the biology, but it can't be put into practice because it's too disruptive and too radical at this point in time. But I feel
wait. But it's not so much that it's too disruptive and too radical, but we have literally billion-dollar industries built on finding the genetic cure for cancer or finding the immuno cure for cancer. And these guys aren't just going to, and gals aren't just going to go, oh, we've been going down the wrong road for a decade. We made a mistake. Let's close up shop and let's go. And so they have to dig their heels in. They have to protect. And that's sad for the consumer.
No, it's sad for the patients.
That's what I mean. I mean, the consumer, the patient.
The patient is the consumer. But in this particular case, unfortunately, I feel bad because all these poor cancer that have, malignant cancers now are going to have to be sacrificed for a system that is failed in its ability to understand the biology. And even if they understand it, they may not want to do it because it's too disruptive to the revenue flows. And so we're sacrificing cancer patients when we don't have to.
I agree.
It's one of the great tragedies in the history of medicine.
Right now, yeah.
And unfortunately, I feel so bad because all these patients come to me and says, "How do I get the Don? What do I do? Well, we have a protocol, but no oncologist will give you the Don now, and you can't get it. And yet it was used. It wasn't like this drug has been like something new. It's an old drug.
What is it called?
It's called 6-dioxynorlucine. It's a derivative of an antibiotic. It was used years ago on cancer patients.
Does it block the uptake of leucine? Does it block the receptors that are activated by leucine?
No, glutamine.
Glutamine. I'm sorry, glutamine.
Yeah. So what it does, it's a glutaminase inhibitor. So it's a dirty drug, which is means that it targets multiple glutaminase. With a glutaminase, the first thing that when the cancer cell takes in the amino acid glutamine, and then it must metabolize glutamine to glutamate, which is another amino acid. But it releases nitrogen, and that nitrogen is essential for DNA synthesis and RNA synthesis. So the glutamine is providing an essential metabolite, nitrogen, for the rapid synthesis of DNA and RNA, and the glucose is providing the carbons for synthesis of DNA and RNA. But the glutamine does more. It actually, its carbons actually facilitate the synthesis of energy, ATP. So the glucose provides the building blocks for metabolite synthesis, and the glutamine provides the nitrogen and the energy to make cancer cells grow very rapidly and be resistant to all kinds of drug treatment. So if you pull the plug on glucose and glutamine, whoa, they can become vulnerable to all kinds of things. The body just purges them. The body can heal itself if given the opportunity.
Right.
But what I'm telling, but you're 100% right. You've built an industry, both academic and pharmaceutical industries, around the idea that cancer is a genetic disease, and billions of dollars are being spent on therapies that are not related to the origin of the disease.
We have to take a break. Two things I want to do. First of all, I want to promote the book again, because if you know someone that has cancer, if you've had cancer, or if cancer runs in your family and you don't want to get cancer, this is a must-own book for everybody in America today, where cancer is rampant. Cancer as a metabolic disease, go to shrnetwork.biz/cancer-metabolic and get this book today. The other thing I want to mention is I have a joke whenever I want to make fun of the genetic model of cancer. I say, if I jump in the ocean and take a deep breath, I will die. The geneticist will say, he's not genetically predisposed to breathe water, let's fix his genetics. I say, just don't jump in the water and take a deep breath. It's a simple alternative. But you're right. It's really sad, because there are a lot of lives that have been lost, and more that will be lost because of the current standard of care for treating cancer. We're going to take one quick commercial break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back with more Superhuman Radio. Knoll Creek Hemp Company's Delta 8 soft chews are the premier Delta 8 product on the market today. Knoll Creek's Delta 8 is produced from high-quality hemp-derived CBD oil, and soft chews are manufactured using proprietary nano-emulsification technique that ensures the Delta 8 soft chew will timely deliver the desired effects cleanly and consistently from piece to piece. In a space where at least 70% of the products fail to meet label claims, and where most users of conventional hemp products are left disappointed, Knoll Creek's Delta 8 soft chews are a product you can trust. Visit shrnetwork.biz/delta8. That's DELTA and the number 8, and use the code SHR20 to get 20% off your first order today. Being superhuman means being conscientious about the choices we make. White Oak Pastures is superhuman when it comes to raising livestock. They're committed to animal welfare, land regeneration, and rural revival. They responsibly manage the entire process from the pasture to your doorstep. High quality, pasture raised, great tasting meat from a farm you can trust. Full nose to tail selections. They even have options for your pet. Go to shrnetwork.biz/white oak and use code SHR20 to save 20% off your entire first order. Ketones. Hey, this is Carl Lenore. Superhuman Radio is the longest running health, fitness, and anti-aging podcast in the world, going into our 16th year of continuous production. If you have a product that you think would appeal to the superhuman nation, we can get you on the air quickly and inexpensively to help promote your brand. Join the ranks of some of the largest and most successful companies in the world who know how great it is to be affiliated with Superhuman Radio. Contact Dan Kapitsky today. That's DAN.KOPITZKE@superhumanradio.net to learn more. I need to share with you all a revolutionary new wearable technology called HapBee. HapBee allows you to enjoy the effects of caffeine, alcohol, nicotine, melatonin, and muscle relaxants without actually ingesting anything. Yes, really. They figured out the unique magnetic signature of each of these molecules and recorded them. Just put the HapBee on, choose the signal you want, and it starts projecting the magnetic signature of that molecule that you choose, like coffee for feeling alert. Go to hapbee.com/SHR. That's HAPBEE.com/SHR to learn more more and unlock an $80 discount exclusively for the Superhuman Radio listeners. Attention meat lovers. I've discovered a snack with just 2 ingredients, meat and salt. That is so tender and delicious, you almost can't believe it. That's right. No soy, sugar, or other crap. Our partner, Carnivore Snacks, nailed it with these mouth-watering snacks. They have a variety too. Ribeye, pork loin, leg of lamb, and more, all sourced here in the USA from regenerative farms. Claim your superhuman offer from Carnivore Snacks today at shrnetwork.biz/snacks. That's SNAX. Use the code superhuman for 15% off your first order plus a free 2-ounce pork loin. Whether your goal is to build muscle or burn fat, you'll find everything you need at Redcon One. Need help getting a good night's sleep? Try Fade Out, or the most popular pre-workout supplement on the market today, Total War. Sign up for their new Transformation Challenge and win $10,000, or shop for apparel that people at the gym will know that you are serious about your training. Need a testosterone booster that works? Check out Boomstick. Whatever you need, you'll find the best quality supplements on the market at Redcon One. Go to redcon1.com. That's REDCON, the number 1.com, or go to superhumanradio.net and click the Redcon One banner ad today.
Spit that out right now. This is the Superhuman Channel.
Welcome back. We're talking with Dr. Thomas Seyfried. Really, one of the greatest contributors to furthering the discussion about cancer treatment today. The book is a must-have. I'm going to put it up again because I think everybody should own this book, because cancer is pretty predictable to happen the older you get. Cancer as a metabolic disease. Go to shrnetwork.biz/cancer-metabolic. Let's talk about Pablo's case a little bit more, because we have a question here that I think can be answered.
Mm-hmm.
So Aiden Ray says, do we have any data on glio remission remaining after X amount of time on keto, parenthetically, then transitioning back onto some carbs, or must keto be maintained permanently? So your study with Pablo is now 80 months, right? That's like what, 6 years, almost 7 years?
Yeah, well, this August 14th will be 7 years. So, this is an extremely important question. Our goal is to, in press pulse metabolic therapy, and Pablo was only on partial press pulse therapy. I don't know how long Pablo will need to do this, but don't forget his keto diet is actually a carnivore diet. We have that written in the paper. A lot of people say, this keto is going to kill me. Pablo's eating steaks and lamb chops and pork chops smothered in butter and ghee. He just does not eat any carbohydrates. Now, he's doing that long term. He's realized that, his life depends on him doing this. But we think we can eliminate the cancer using strategic drugs along with the metabolic therapy, so that one's life. Now, the very question is, we have experiments in the lab exactly right now with our preclinical glioblastoma and metastatic models, exactly as we're speaking, where we have kept mice alive with advanced metastatic cancer into the stratosphere. But the cancer is still there, just like Pablo. We can see the cells, but we're not sure that if we pull off the metabolic therapy, will this cancer explode back, or will it have reached a new stable state? We don't know. So this is where our research is right now. Our research is, how long can we manage cancer in an effective way without toxicity, improving overall quality of life and overall survival? These are very important questions, but we're right at the very beginning of answering those questions. So we appreciate that question. It's extremely important, and maybe next year I'll be able to give you an answer to that question.
Why is the glucose produced by the body through metabolic processes like gluconeogenesis not feeding the cancers? I mean, there's glucose in the bloodstream. The ketogenic diet, there's still residual glucose in the bloodstream that you're producing. Yeah. Why doesn't that feed the cancer?
Well, because it does to an extent. But when you raise ketones elevated higher, you can force you push it down even further and make it. Also, there's another interesting. The body has a tendency to work to heal itself, And when you restrict glucose to that degree, cells that normally take in very little glucose upregulate some of those transporters or becomes extremely insulin sensitive. Therefore, they compete directly against the cancer cell where the glucose is essential, where it's desirable but not essential to other cells. And therefore, you have a mass effect that the normal cells are competing directly against the tumor cells for a fuel that both cells use, but one absolutely needs. That's how the body works to heal itself. So those are good questions. Excellent. We thought about this.
So does that mean that taking exogenous ketones, if you are treating a cancer, you're taking a therapeutic approach to cancer, so that you can get your blood level of ketones higher than you could just with a diet alone, and still incorporate carbohydrates into the diet? Could that buffet?
We don't think so. And that's why we developed the glucose ketone index calculator, where cancer patients can determine whether or not they're in a state of therapeutic ketosis that'll put maximum pressure on the cancer cells. And Pablo used the precision extra meter, but you can use the keto mojo meter. There's a couple of meters out there that will give us glucose ketone numbers, and you divide the glucose by the amount of ketone in millimolar, and you get a number, a singular number. And the closer that number is to 1.0 or below, tells you you're putting maximum metabolic pressure on those cancer cells. It's in that state when the patient reaches the state of therapeutic ketosis is when you begin to bring in the heavy artillery, which are the drugs that will pound out the glutamine, and that's the pulse. I mean, it's such an elegant, non-toxic. I mean, it's almost a pleasure to do this, and the patients once they're in ketosis, they're eager to do this. And the other drug is embendazole, which we're showing and others are showing it's the anti-parasite medication. And we're not really sure how it works, but I'll tell you, man, it works like it's unbelievable. So that together with keto, we think it's hitting both glutaminolysis, glycolysis, with other drugs that target. We can handle and manage cancer very, very effectively without toxicity, but it does require some input on the part of the patient. The patient needs knowledge, a little bit of knowledge, and the patient has to be motivated, and the family of the patient has to recognize the value of what's going on here. And they all have to participate in one form or another to help the patient. So it's a team effort on the part of the family and then part of the body. You've got to give the body the opportunity to go after and help also in the management of the disease. So, but all this comes when you understand what's going on.
That's the hard part. And you can't, if people are critical thinkers and they learn this, then they go, wait a minute, this is worthy. Which leads me to this next comment and question as well. So I shared with you off the air that I sent Rush Limbaugh your book, but he was dead like 6 months later. So it wasn't soon enough anyway. But I sent him your book because I thought, this could save his life. Now, I know that Rush didn't believe in diet plays any role in disease because he had said that on his show numerous times. And I know he also didn't believe in exercise and all that sort of stuff. And, God bless him, that was his choice and he lived by those choices. But when I sent the book, I thought to myself, he's going to think to himself, this is nonsense. You're going to tell me diet? You said something very interesting off the air. You said the wealthiest people tend to die from cancer because, explain that phenomenon.
Well, I mean, I have only anecdotal information on that, but
no study.
As I said, you read the Wall Street Journal, and when a couple of years ago, as I said, the Wall Street Journal was had an article that Paul Allen had died from cancer, and I looked, and it said he had a lymphoma, and he went to Fred Hutch in Seattle, and within a couple of weeks, he was dead. And, you don't die from lymphoma in a couple of weeks. It appeared that he may have taken one of the new immunotherapies or one of the new chemo, whatever it was, it's unlikely he died from cancer. You can't die that quickly. And the same thing with Blake Nordstrom of the Nordstrom department stores. He was apparently very healthy when he was diagnosed with lymphoma, and he took some therapy at one of the top medical centers and was dead in a couple of weeks. And I said, what's happening? Why these fairly healthy guys have all the money in the world, go in for treatment, and they're dead? And I get hundreds and hundreds of emails from poor people. They can't afford those expensive therapies.
Right.
So they're doing metabolic therapy.
Right.
And some of them are living, they don't die in 2 weeks. I'll tell you much this.
Well, and
I've
never heard of anybody dying from a lymphoma quickly. It's usually something that just kind of erodes your body over time.
Yeah.
But it's a really interesting phenomenon because there's this attitude that I'm sure Rush Limbaugh had the best cancer doctors money could buy. And all these people, they get the best. But the problem is that the best cancer doctors money can buy are using the standard approach, chemo and radiation, and maybe some new immunotherapies that they're experimenting with. They're still on the wrong track. They're still treating cancer the wrong way. They're just using more aggressive approaches to do it wrong.
I mean, that's the whole thing. You have to ask, is your approach to manage my disease based on the mitochondrial metabolic theory or the somatic mutation theory? And if they don't know, or they never heard of the metabolic theory, then how are you going to go to a person to treat yourself when he has no clue of what the nature of the disease is? And this then explains why you have 1,600 people a day dying from cancer, over 600,000 a year dying from cancer. I mean, it's the same all over the world too. It's not just the United States. In China, they got 8,000 a day dying from cancer. They have a bigger population, but it's the same. Italy, England, Germany, and they're all doing the same standard of care. And they're all getting the same results over and over and over again, and it's not a surprise to me, why glioblastoma patients have such a poor survival, and they're using the same therapy over and over and over again. Radiation, chemo, temozolomide is the chemogen, and the death rate is so predictable and so consistent from one hospital, from one center to the next, and they continue to do it again and again, expecting a different result. What did Einstein say? I think he said, doing the same thing over and over again. He said it's called insanity. It's insanity.
Yeah. So people, well, I'll ask you, is there any correlation between type 2 diabetes and the onset of cancer?
I think what we wrote is that type 2 diabetes is associated with systemic inflammation. Systemic inflammation is a provocative agent for damaging oxidative phosphorylation in some tissue or cells. So if you have chronic inflammation and it's linked to diabetes, you simply put yourself at risk for knocking out or damaging oxidative phosphorylation in some cell of some tissue, thereby putting you at a higher risk for developing cancer. And that's the linkage that we think of between diabetes, because both diabetes and cancer both are often associated with systemic inflammation. That's why one of the biomarkers we use is called C-reactive protein. Mm-hmm. And C-reactive protein is a marker for systemic inflammation. And when you're healthy, and diabetic people sometimes have quite elevated C-reactive protein. And type 2 diabetes. And, when you're healthy, I always get my C-reactive protein measured. I always get, the blood glucose measured. I get all these things measured. And generally, if the blood work looks really good, I'm not too concerned about things. But, when we see cancer patients, many of them have type 2 diabetes. They have cardiovascular. They have a whole range of other ailments. And that's why we bring the cancer patients. We like to think we can bring cancer patients into a new state of metabolic homeostasis through fasting and ketogenic diets. And once they're in that state, then we go after the glucose and glutamine in a much more strategic and precise way. So it's a strategy, and it will work. There's no question about it. I've seen it work dozens of times. But we're not doing big clinical trials on this because they cost a lot of money.
Right.
And who's going to do a clinical trial on a therapy that might say, well, hey, we don't need radiation or chemo or immunotherapies?
Yeah, no one's going to make money on that.
Yeah, well, this is the thing. So it becomes, does that mean that we're sacrificing cancer patients because of a financial situation?
Well, if the National Institutes of Health really cared about health, they would be funding these studies.
Well, they're not funding the studies because if you go to the National Cancer Institute, their website says right on their website, cancer is a genetic disease. So they're funding mutation screening and all kinds of things like this. So if the foundational theory under which you're treating the disease is misunderstood, then you're not going to make any major advances in the disease. So it's not that, and the other thing is that with Pablo Kelly, the argument is, oh, that's only an N of 1. But we in that one paper showed in no uncertain terms how his survival is absolutely linked to a simultaneous targeting of the availability of glucose and glutamine by his diet and the acquisition of a drug, of a mutation, a therapeutic mutation called the IDH1 mutation. So the biochemistry and the science is telling us exactly why Pablo Kelly is living so long. So an N of 1, well, that means he's only one guy. But the mechanism of why he's alive is so powerful and so compelling and so linked to basic science, you think you'd want to do it again. Right. If you took 100 guys up in an airplane and threw them all out, except one guy, you put a parachute on him, it's an N of 1. I mean, how many more guys do you have to put parachutes on before you realize that they won't die when you throw them out of a plane?
Right. 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 No, you're right. You're right.
So I mean, you have to do that double blind crossover on parachutes. I mean, this is absurd.
Right.
And that's what the clinical trial paradigm is. You got to do a double blind crossover. That protects the industry to do only those kinds of therapies where you use drugs in a double blind crossover. Metabolic therapy does not do double blind crossover.
Right. And you wouldn't be able to get that IRB too, because if you were going to feed people a horrible diet that is going to promote their cancer and they're going to die, as the control group,
right.
You're not allowed to do that. No. You can't do that.
Well, they do that anyway. I mean, the bottom line is those people are eating that stuff. The cancer patients are eating that stuff anyway.
Yeah.
But you're right about the IRB because we tried to do that. And they want to do, for glioblastoma, well, we'll consider metabolic therapy only after tumor recurrence. Well, the tumor recurs all the time. Why is it recurring? I irradiated and poisoned the person, freed up massive amounts of glucose and glutamine, and now you want me to correct that at the same time correcting his life.
Well, look at the study that I did. I talked about at the beginning of the show.
Tragedy.
They were allowed to use the ketogenic diet as an adjunct to chemotherapy and radiation, but they couldn't use it by itself.
I mean, Carl, think about this. If you were going to do this, you'd have the standard of care as it's done right now with the consistent death rate for glioblastoma. You would have the standard of care used with metabolic therapy, right? And then you would have metabolic therapy used by itself.
Right.
Now, what's going to happen if the metabolic therapy used by itself trumps the other two? That's
why they won't do that study.
That's why they won't do it. So we have to sacrifice. So think about all the poor folks out there now that might be listening with metastatic cancers and glioblastoma that have to be sacrificed because of the system. And the other thing, Carl, the problem is there's no outrage. And what we have done with the cancer industry is cancer itself, we've balkanized all the different types of cancers. Lung cancer is different from breast cancer, different from brain cancer. Everybody's running and jumping pink ribbons. That's all bullshit. The thing right now is all cancers are fundamentally the same kind of disease. They're all fermenters. There's got to be a march on Washington. There's got to be something. If people want to live, they better wake up quick and realize that all these cancers are the same and they can be managed by targeting glucose and glutamine simultaneously.
Yeah, because now you're going down to the lowest common denominator of what actually causes the disease.
Yeah.
Instead of all these little abstract offshoots over here that you want to target just those. We have to take a break. When we come back, I want to talk about mTOR and cellular senescence and if any of those play into the role of developing cancer. Stay tuned. We'll be right back with more Superhuman Radio. Every day, there's a new wellness trend. Eat that. Do this, avoid those. How do you know where to start or who to trust? Inside Tracker helps you cut through the noise by analyzing your blood, your DNA, your lifestyle, and your fitness tracker to provide you with a science-backed, trackable action plan on how to live, age, and perform better. Personalized, one-size-fits-one recommendations to help you optimize you. For a limited time, Inside Tracker is offering Superhuman Radio listeners 25% off the entire store. Go to shrnetwork.biz/inside tracker, INSIDETRACKER, to save 25% off. Change begins on the inside. Is there something interfering with your happiness or ability to achieve your goals? BetterHelp can help. They will assess your needs and match you with a licensed therapist. This is not a self-help or crisis line. It's professional counseling done securely online. They have a broad range of experts and are available worldwide without having to wait in an uncomfortable waiting room. Get the help you need and start living a happier life today. Go to shrnetwork.biz/betterhelp. That's better, HELP, and receive 10% off your first month of counseling when you use the code SHR. I keep saying the number one killer is insulin resistance. Managing blood sugar is the key to living long and aging well. But we all like to eat starchy carbohydrates and sugars from time to time. How do I manage this? I use a product called Blood Sugar Breakthrough by Bioptimizers. This easy-to-take supplement is the result of numerous tests to find the absolute best formula for maintaining healthy blood sugar. Blood Sugar Breakthrough works to safely lower blood sugar after meals so that you can maintain a healthy weight and redirect carbohydrates to your muscles where they can be burned as energy. This means you'll avoid the worst effects of high blood sugar, like weight gain and advanced aging, while enjoying more stable energy, mental clarity, and fewer cravings. Go to shrnetwork.biz/blood sugar and save 10% with code SHR10 today. Being superhuman means being conscientious about the choices we make. White Oak Pastures is superhuman when it comes to raising livestock. They're committed to animal welfare, land regeneration, and rural revival. They responsibly manage the entire process from the pasture to your doorstep. High quality, pasture-raised, great-tasting meat from a farm you can trust. Full, nose to tail selections. They even have options for your pet. Go to shrnetwork.biz/white oak and use code SHR20 to save 20% off your entire first order. Ketones. Knoll Creek Hemp Company's Delta 8 soft chews are the premier Delta 8 product on the market today. Knoll Creek's Delta 8 is produced from high-quality hemp-derived CBD oil, and soft chews are manufactured using proprietary nano-emulsification technique that ensures the Delta 8 soft chew will timely deliver the desired effects cleanly and consistently from piece to piece. In a space where at least 70% of the products fail to meet label claims and where most users of conventional hemp products are left disappointed, Knoll Creek's Delta 8 soft chews are a product you can trust. Visit shrnetwork.biz/delta8. That's DELTA and the number 8, and use the code SHR20 to get 20% off your first order today. Remember those rectangular toaster pastries you used to love when you were a kid? Well, Legendary Foods has just made them better. The new cake-style tasty pastry is like nothing you've ever had before. With 20 grams of high-quality protein and less than 1 gram of sugar, you'll feel like you're cheating, but you're not. Go to shrnetwork.biz/legendary and use the code SHR10 to save 10% off your purchase of tasty pastries. Now available in cookies and cream, red velvet cake, birthday cake, blueberry, strawberry, brown sugar cinnamon, and hot fudge sundae. Go to shrnetwork.biz/legendary and use code SHR10 today.
Move over, superheroes. This is the Superhuman Channel.
Welcome back. If you want to go listen to the show I did with Pablo Kelly, it was show number 1893. It's from 2016. It was 2 years after he was diagnosed with his glioblastoma. It was a fascinating discussion. We probably should have him back on and do a review of where he is and what he's done differently and all that sort of stuff. You know, when you've done a show for almost 16 years, when Natalie told me the fella that was in the study was Pablo Kelly, I was like, wait a minute, he was on the show. I went back and I looked, and sure enough, he was there. Okay, mTOR. You know, within the anti-aging community, crushing mTOR is all the rage. I think it's a horrible idea. mTOR does so many things, but there is the whole senescent cell phenomenon. mTOR and senescent cells, any correlation to cancer and tumors?
Well, yeah, people love to study mTOR in cancer, mammalian target of rapamycin, what it is, mTOR. and they're studying AKT signaling, PI3, AK. When you take away glucose and glutamine, you don't have to worry. It kills everything. And why, why study all this stuff when you don't, unless you like studying things and not having it linked to managing the disease.
Right.
Yeah, glucose and glutamine targeting will target and get rid of mTOR, PI. It shuts down all the signaling cascades. As far as senescence is concerned, I'm of the opinion that we die as we begin to dissipate our ability to use energy to maintain the function of pumps, membrane pumps, because ultimately all of our body has to have a gradient across all the cells. And when that gradient disappears from energy failure, you reach equilibrium and you're dead. All right. So energy is essential for maintaining viability. So the question is, it's all the second law of thermodynamics, which is entropy. And what the correct diet and lifestyle will do is simply delay the inevitable. Delaying entropy is basically, no one's going to live forever. So but some people will die a lot faster than others, or some people can survive a lot longer than others. But survival is also a quality of life. And the issue here is that if you are in periodic therapeutic ketosis, burning ketone bodies delays entropy. It delays the very process of disorder. So the longer you can maintain disorder and energy efficiency, the longer you're going to live. And ketones can deliver energy with few oxygen-free radicals, which the free radicals ultimately break down our ability to generate energy efficiently. So the longer we burn ketones, the longer we can live, and how we delay entropy. So those are the key things that we do, and essentially cancer is just accelerated entropy. So you're going to kill that cell, and your body's going to live a little bit longer. So I don't worry about mTOR. I don't worry about any of those things. People always talk about it, but once you kill the cancer cell, what are you worried about it for?
Is there a role for exogenous ketones if they're using that calculator, the ratio calculator, and they're like, I just can't get my ketones high enough, so I'll use a ketone salt? Is there a place?
Yeah. Oh yeah, my colleague Dominic D'Agostino from the University of South Florida is big on building the ketones. So is Richard Veach, and there's groups in Oxford. They taste horrible. I think you have to put them in a pill form or something. Because you can't. They're very, very foul tasting things. But once you can get them into your body, oh yeah, you'll drop the blood sugar down really low. It's a little push. It's part of our press pulse therapy. That if you can get into therapeutic ketosis, you can push it a little bit with either high fat diets or ketone supplementations. Pablo, as far as I know, did not do ketone supplementation, but I'm sure, if someone were to give him one of these, he'll measure his GKI, measure your GKI, and see what it does. For example, I measured my GKI one day, and it was 50 something, which is someone who's not in ketosis. I chugged a little bottle of some. They send me this stuff, these people send me things from companies. So I took a little bottle of ketones. Esters.
But it was an ester or a salt?
It was both. I was the salt, the ketone salt.
Okay. Yeah.
And I walked a mile and a half, and I came back, and my GKI was down to 18. So clearly in the right direction. But if I were to have cancer and I wanted to kill cancer or manage type 2 diabetes or these kinds of things, I would have to bring it down to about 2.0 or below. And sustain it there, keep it there. And yes, ketone taking these things can facilitate the sustenance of that therapeutic state. Look at Pablo. As I said, he's eating steaks and lamb chops smothered in ghee and butter. Well, ghee and butter will elevate your ketones and keep him in a low GKI. And we published that in the paper. People can actually follow what he did and see if they can achieve the same level GKI ratios as he did.
When you were first on the show, when you published the book, and I know I'm putting this book up a lot, but I really can't stress enough. There's people out there that just need to buy this book for themselves, for their family members. Cancer as a Metabolic Disease. Go to shrnetwork.biz/cancer-metabolic to get the book. When you were very first on the show, I said to you, Dr. Seyfried, if you were diagnosed with cancer, what would you do tomorrow? And do you remember what you said?
Well, I mean, I know what I would do now. Probably the same thing. First thing I do is get myself first thing I do is measure get a blood readout. And this is what we do. I would go and immediately get a blood readout, all the biomarkers in my blood, the lipid profiles, the vitamin profiles, all kinds of profiles that I would get, C-reactive protein, a variety of markers. Then I would know where I was. Then I would immediately go on a zero carbohydrate diet, bringing down my glucose and elevating my ketones. Once I did that, I would then do a water only fast for as long as I could, until I could get myself really into good therapeutic ketosis. Then I would take embendazole, the parasite drug that I mentioned to you, and I would buy Don myself. I know where to get it. I can buy it from a company in China that I've already tested the drug and shown to be effective. I would buy it myself. I have physician friends, and I would tell them, here, give me a port, put it in. I'll sign a paper, say you're not going to be held responsible, because I already tested 1,000 times and I know it's not toxic. And I would tell them exactly how long I want, 3 days on and 4 days off.
Of the Don, about the Don now.
Yeah, Don and embendazole together.
Okay.
Okay, I would do it together. And I would do it every week, this strategy. How do I know? Because I've spoken to people who have done this, and they seem to be doing really well and surviving. So this is not, so incredibly difficult. But I would bite the bullet, and until I'd be choosing, you're in charge of your own destiny.
Yeah.
And basically, I'm not going to turn my soul over to a system where they have very little knowledge about the biology of the disease that I have. And I would consult with my friends, even though I know what to do, even though I know how to do it. I would still like to consult with my physician friends and nutritional colleagues like Miriam Kalamian. She's a spectacular person, treats cancer patients all the time. And, these folks are just a good sounding board. And I would fight the disease on my own terms. And I would hang on, and I would live, because I know I would be I would be even healthier.
Right.
This is the thing, you emerge from cancer healthier than when you started. You don't lose hair. You don't bleed from oral orifices.
Right.
You don't have to lose massive, and the weight you lose is therapeutic weight loss, not pathological weight loss.
Right.
So all of these things work together, and I'm confident that I will be able to survive in a fairly good. I mean, I'd have to give up some beer. I'd have to give up some whiskey. I might have to give up some of those kinds of things. But if you want to live, this is what you'd have to do.
Yeah, right. You can make your choice. Exactly.
Yeah, so it's your choice.
Aiden Ray is asking about Don. Is it something that people can get on their own?
It's hard to get, and this is one of the tragedies in my mind, because the Alzheimer's disease community just worked with the drug company to get that new Alzheimer's drug to use for Alzheimer's disease, based on the pressure of the patient advocates to get that drug. The same thing could happen with Don. The difference here is that the Alzheimer's drug, according to all the scientific reports, doesn't work. So better to have no hope than it's better to have false hope than no hope.
Right.
In the case of Don, you're talking with a drug that's a heavy artillery that can blast the crap out of these tumor cells, and it's not going to hurt you. Now, why can't that drug be made available to the cancer patients immediately? And the question, I feel bad. So the patients, the cancer groups, and as I said, they've been balkanized, they've been separated. The breast cancer groups got to get together with the lung cancer groups, the brain cancer groups, the colon cancer groups. Get your forces together. Go to do exactly what the Alzheimer's advocates did. And you want to survive cancer? Get yourself into therapeutic ketosis and start hammering away at your glutamine. You're going to do a lot better. This is all I can say. I can get it because I know where to buy it, and I would use my own money to buy it and I would find somebody to buy it for me. Listen, the guys that have a few bucks, they're the ones who can get it. The poor people that can't get it, it's a tragedy. So again, it's this whole crazy stuff of not allowing people to get the stuff that they need to survive.
Two other drugs. So Aiden Ray, and then we'll pull the plug. I know you're busy. Aiden Ray says, what about metformin? And I want to know, what about rapamycin? Because rapamycin was originally a cancer drug.
Yeah. But rapamycin is a target for TOR. You don't have to worry about mTOR when you pull a plug on the glucose and the glutamine.
Okay.
Metformin, it's a little push. It can help you out a little bit, but it's not the big hammer.
Right.
But I don't deny that if someone wants to take metformin they're not going to. It doesn't work by lowering blood sugar. As a matter of fact, we're not really sure how it has any therapeutic. I mean, it has some therapeutic benefit. There's no question, but it's very minor relative to Don and relative to embendazole, relative to therapeutic ketosis. Those are the power. That's the power that will handle the cancer.
So if people want to learn more and even donate money to further the cause, the website is foundationformetabolictherapies.com. Talk about that website real quick. What will people learn?
Well, that website was set up, Foundation for Metabolic. I think it's Metabolic Cancer Therapies, but you'll see it there. I think that should be. It was set up by Travis Christofferson.
You're author. Right. It is. It's Foundation. It's Foundation for Metabolic Cancer Therapies.
Yes.
.com. Let me change that while you're talking. Go ahead.
Yeah. So, it was set up by Travis Christofferson, who is the author of the book called "Tripping Over the Truth: the Rise of the Metabolic Theory of Cancer," the new concept. Also, Susan Wadia-Ells' book on busting breast cancer is based on the metabolic theory of cancer. Mariam Kalamian's book on keto for cancer is based on the metabolic theory of cancer. So all of these and the support that we get to do our research, which would answer some of the questions of your viewers, comes predominantly from Foundations of Metabolic Cancer Therapies, because he is absolutely convinced that cancer is a metabolic disease. And once we work out the details, we'll be able to establish a new standard of care, a standard of care that specifically targets the cancer cells without harming the normal cells in your body. I mean, it's going to happen. I just don't know when. Like you said, Carl, I mean, it's hard to convince somebody to do something different when their salary depends on them not doing that.
Right.
And again, we're sacrificing we're sacrificing all these poor folks in large part because of that.
Yeah.
So,
Very
the biology is clear. It's a tragedy.
Very sad. It's a travesty when you go to a doctor and you put your trust in him, and what they're about to do to you is actually going to hurt you more than the disease. And there's a lot of, it's not just cancer. That happens a lot. Prostate cancer, they give you that androgen deprivation therapy. Guys die from the side effects of ATD. So it's really, we look back in the 15 and 1600s and think, oh my God, they were so barbaric. They were giving people mercury and they were doing all these horrible things. You know what? As medicine progresses, the barbaricness of it doesn't subside. It's just more subtle.
Yeah, well, I think the current standard of care will be recognized as one of these singular most barbaric things that we've ever done, other than surgery without anesthesia.
Yes, I agree. I agree.
So,
listen, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show today. I hope that people heed this discussion. Send this show to your friends. Get them to buy the book. Anybody that you know who has cancer has to have that book. I'm going to put it up one last time. I know I'm a pain in the ass, but the book can be found at shrnetwork.biz/cancer-metabolic. The book is called Cancer as a Metabolic Disease. I hold this book in such high regard. This book, Dr. Dale Bredesen's book, An End to Alzheimer's. These are two books that identify lifestyle, which diet is part of, as the cure for disease. And there are so many other diseases out there that can be cured. Before we go, you told me a story when we were off the air about somebody who started eating keto or carnivore, and all these diseases just started to go away. I forget what we were talking about when you were talking.
I said that Pablo's ketogenic diet is a kind of a carnivore ketogenic diet.
Right.
And you don't have to, there are vegans out there who can achieve the same therapeutic benefit if they can get their GKI into the same range. So it's really not restrictive to the kinds of foods. As long as you maintain a low GKI, people say, can you eat this? Can you eat that? I don't know. Eat whatever it is. See what it does to your GKI. And if it keeps it low, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
And the other thing, Carl, is a lot of the updates on the book come from our online publications, which are open access. So anybody who wants to read about the press pulse concept or Pablo Kelly, these papers are open access. So they are available to anyone. You don't have to pay a journal fee or anything like that. So there are technically, the thing that you have to realize that the cancer patient is going to have to improve scientific literacy. And unfortunately, in our society today, scientific literacy is not one of the things that we pride ourselves in.
In fact, I've said over the years that my audience would be so much bigger.
Yeah.
I dumbed stuff down like Dr. Oz does and made oversimplified stuff, but then the real magic and the real value of the information is lost when you try to dumb it down. So I say we use words like autophagy here. We use these terms because I want people to go out and get a dictionary and find what the word means and go, oh, okay. Because in order for you to save your own life, you have to invest some time in the science. You have to understand the science.
Well,
So
Carl, I can tell you, you'd be surprised how fast people can become scientifically literate when their life is on the line.
Yeah.
Yeah. If I could get my students to learn science as fast as some of these glioblastoma patients, I would really be doing a great job.
Dr. Seyfried, thank you so much for always making time to come on the show.
Well, thank you very much. It's been nice to be here.
And we'll talk to you again soon. Take care. Have a happy 4th of July. And
you too. Take it easy, Carl.
Thank you. And that's it for today. Hope those of you who have plans for the 4th of July weekend who are inside the United States have an enjoyable time and spend time with your family and out in the sun. Get out in the sun. Sun is good. Don't listen to the BS about skin cancer and the sun. Skin cancer comes from your diet. Go back and listen to the show I did, I think it was last year, about the real origins of skin cancer. But have fun this weekend. If you're playing with firecrackers, be sure to count your fingers after you're done playing. And we will see everybody Tuesday. We're back on the air Tuesday with more Superhuman Radio. Again, share the show. Thanks for being here.